When the original Acura NSX debuted in 1990, it was universally renowned for not only its high-revving naturally aspirated engine, aluminum monocoque chassis, and sharp handling, but also for its competence as a daily driver. New levels of refinement, visibility, comfort, and reliability redefined how usable a super sports car could be. Fast forward nearly 20 years and the Audi R8 debuted, presenting those with about $110,000 burning a hole in their wallets with largely the same proposition as the Acura. A, air quotes, somewhat affordable supercar that blends raw character, modern technology, and everyday usability in one stunningly good-looking package. Now in 2018, pristine examples of both the mildly updated 1997 Plus NSX and first generation R8 can be had for about $65,000 to $75,000, which poses the obvious question: which is the better 24/7 supercar? Let's take a drive in these halo cars from Acura and Audi and attempt to answer that question.
Alright guys, so this is Robert here, and this is his 1999 Acura NSX. He is also the owner of the 2000 Audi R8 that we're going to drive after this car. From an ownership perspective, I know you've had this car for a while, but you've only had the R8 for like, what, a couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's not been more than just 2 or 3 weeks, and it's been an interesting juxtaposition between this car and the R8, definitely.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you have both of these cars, because about a year ago, I was actually looking up prices of the early generation V8 manual transmission R8s, and it kind of got me, scratching the old invisible beard, thinking like, what if I sold the NSX for like 40, 45 and added like 15K on top? I could have an R8, because if you really think about these two cars, they were both really kind of marketed as everyday daily drivable supercars, or I guess high-end sports cars if you don't really think they're supercars. How do you think the two cars compare, albeit having only owned the R8 for such a short amount of time?
Well, it's interesting, just to echo a couple of your comments. Firstly, when I was going to buy the 99, and I called my buddy Steven in New Orleans, that you all know for making all the carbon fiber parts for NSXs, he said, now you're talking, R8 money.
Yeah.
And I was going, really? And he said, yeah, man, I mean, you're talking R8 money what you're talking about for the 99. It's true, I do have the 99, I do have the R8. They're very different cars. They both have some really great pluses about them, but they're definitely two very different cars, as you'll find out today when you drive them.
Yeah, they're different eras. I mean, this car, even though it's a 99, it's really a late 80s design.
Yeah.
It is an aluminum monocoque, which is the very first for the industry, and actually the Audi R8 also is an aluminum monocoque, so there's a little bit of technology shared between the two there. Obviously, they're both mid-engine. This one's rear-wheel drive. The R8 is four-wheel drive, but it's a very rear-biased four-wheel drive system. Manual transmission, power steering, naturally aspirated, high-revving, 8,000 plus RPM engines. These cars are somewhat similar on paper in their intended purpose. Obviously, this one being a 3.2-liter V6 makes 290 horsepower. The R8 makes 420 horsepower from its 4.2-liter V8.
All the reviews from on YouTube or any of the car reviews that have gone back and revisited the R8, you see a lot of the same sort of comments as to groundbreaking. Like, it was the first one that had the LED lights that were on during the day.
Right.
And the fact that it's held up so well as a naturally aspirated V8 manual, and it's even more appreciated now than when it came out, because it's actually an affordable car now. And I actually daily, that R8, I've driven it every single day. I mean, I've taken it to Home Depot, I go to Whole Foods, I drive it to work, I've just driven the car everywhere. It's just so comfortable and easy and fun and distinctive in the same way that the NSX has such a distinctive look.
Right.
People, their eye is naturally attracted to it. It's the same thing with the R8.
It's that low-slung, mid-engine, cabin forward, really sharp nose with a long tail.
Exactly.
That kind of look is just unmistakable sports car, like
it is.
True driver-oriented car. It still amazes me every time I get into one, just the absolutely amazing front visibility. And not just front visibility, but 360 visibility.
Right.
There's something you just don't get in the contemporary Ferraris or Lamborghinis of the time.
Not even in the R8. You'll notice that on the pillars on the R8 that there are blind spots that you do not have in the NSX.
Because you got those side blades, right?
Exactly.
On the R8.
You just don't find this in a sports car or even a quasi, if you will, supercar. You don't see this kind of visibility.
Right. It really does give you that impression that you're just kind of in this bubble of glass.
Yep.
The A pillars here are so thin. You got excellent visibility because these windows are so long. And in the back, it's just more glass, just all glass all around. And it just gives you the ability to place the car so easily and also be aware of your surroundings, which helps you with driver confidence, which ultimately is what allows you to push a car harder.
And I'm not a real fast guy like you. By the way, if you don't know, Fenton is huevos grandes on the track, kids. I'm going to tell you something. Strap in.
Strap in.
Strap in. When he is accelerating into the turn, you're trying to put your feet through the floorboard to brake. But anyways, with the NSX on the track, I always felt really safe, really predictable, and really good. And the R8 is the same thing, but it has a very different feel that is noticeable because of the all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And you'll see that when you drive it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's drop down a gear and find out. Power steering is nice, I will say. It's really light, this power steering.
Yes, absolutely. And it adjusts on the fly. The car goes where you point it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you're on some crappy Continental all-season, aren't you?
I am. These tires are embarrassing. I'm sorry that you have to even experience the car with these tires.
I'm just pretty blessed to be driving such a rare NSX, honestly.
Well, I've owned a lot of cars, Fenton, and this is probably the rarest car I've owned. And to be honest with you, I never was really drawn to the NSX when it first came out because it was too expensive for where I was in the car world.
Right.
The first cars came out at $65,000, but there was a $30,000 to $35,000 premium paid, and that was just out of my ballpark back then. I just didn't think they were as cool as they are now. I think it's one of the cars that has actually become.
It's aged well.
Oh, it really has.
Yeah,
it really has. And I think that's what's going to happen with the R8 too.
I think so too. Yeah, it's got the potential. The steering is nice too. I'm in third gear right now, whereas in my car right now I'd probably be in second.
The extra gear makes a huge difference.
Just keep the engine in the power band, really hear the VTEC sing.
Love that.
Oh, it's such a good sound.
Just love hearing it sound.
Such a nice sound.
What's so amazing is after you go like a bat out of hell, you get into city traffic and you're motoring along being very quiet and unobtrusive.
When you get on the throttle, you get this really nice air whooshing like induction sound, and it really just sounds really mechanical and raw. But then, like you said, when you're just driving around town at 25% throttle, you barely hear the engine at all.
It's true.
You could totally mistake it for like an Accord.
Absolutely.
And
in fact, my kid makes fun of me. He goes, "Are you taking the Accord?"
Sounds like a Civic or an Accord. Yeah. But a lot of people might think, well, that kind of doesn't give you that exotic appeal, but at the same time, it gives you kind of a dual personality to the car. It is what you want it to be at any given point, based on the way that you're driving it. I think having that option is something that a lot of contemporary supercars at that time, like the Ferrari 348, the 355, and the Lamborghinis and whatnot, they didn't give you the option to be tame. They were always on full tilt. They were always kind of a handful to drive,
or
super
broken.
heavy steering, or broken, obviously. These cars are just dead reliable. I've had no issues with the two that I've owned, and I'm sure
I've owned 3 in the last 2 years. I have done 0 serious maintenance in regard to anything. These cars are bulletproof.
Yeah. So let's do a little bit of a straight line pull here and see how it really performs on full tilt.
Strap in, kids.
Strap in. There you go. considerably harder than my 91. And a lot of that comes down to the gearing. I know the engine, 20 more horsepower, 290 versus 270, but the gearing, I'm telling you, that's what makes a big difference. When I shift from first to second gear at 8,000 RPMs, in my car, it drops all the way down to 4,500. That is well out of the optimal power band of that engine. Whereas this one, I'm pretty sure it keeps it well above 5,000.
Yes, this gearing allows you at peak RPM on the shift to maintain high RPM.
Yeah. Let's try some of these high-speed corners here. Really good sense of stability through these longer sweepers.
Nice driving, Fenton.
I'm pretty familiar with this car.
I wish I could drive as good as Fenton.
All right, so now that we've revisited the NSX in the form of this 99 coupe, which is a first for me. I've never driven an NSX with power steering in a 3.2 liter. Let's jump into this awesome looking Audi R8 and see how it compares.
I like the sound, the feel, the drop, the click.
Well, man, I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot wipe this stupid grin off my face. This is an experience right here.
That's how I felt too, man.
Thank you so much for letting me experience this.
For you, for sure, of course. Absolutely.
So yeah, now, as you can tell, we are in the 2008 Audi R8 4.2 liter V8 model with the gated 6-speed manual transmission, which I must say is an absolute pleasure. It's not exactly the quickest or the smoothest or necessarily even the most mechanical feeling shifter, but just the way that it slots into each gear, you have to be deliberate with your shifts. There's no screwing around here. You have to know what you're doing. It's so cool.
It is.
I feel like I'm like Iron Man or something right now.
It is. It's just, and you know, you get used to the click and the sound and that being part of the shifting pattern, and I just dig it.
Oh my god.
It just sounds nice. Right, it feels right, it locks in right.
So we're in the 2008 R8. Obviously this is, one of the first ones that came out, first model year in the US, wasn't it? So it's got the 4.2 liter V8, 90 degree dual overhead cam, fully aluminum, 4 valves per cylinder, and makes 414, I think, is the corrected horsepower number, but most people just say 420, and about 319-ish foot-pounds of torque. So compare that to the NSX we just drove with 3.2 liter V6. It's basically that engine plus close to 50% in every way. So far, just driving the car, it feels significantly bigger than the NSX. I mean, there's just so much more space in the interior. Obviously, there's no denying, 10 plus years of advancement in technology when it comes to the gauges, even just the material quality here, having this nice LCD, all the buttons, everything just feels modern, as it should. There's no surprise there at all.
And you use the sound, it's like click.
Yeah, the sound is just,
it's
just
so
so
cool.
Nice.
Isn't that great? It's just so cool. The first day I got it, I was getting on the freeway by my house, and I hit it really hard to see what it would do, because it was a nice long stretch. There's actually a little lift, and it kind of took off. I was going too fast. It kind of lifted up, and when it hit again, it was amazing, the feel of all 4 wheels biting and taking off again. And that's
traction.
That's what made me realize that all-wheel drive is not just a saying, it is actually something that works.
Absolutely. I think that's where Audi did something very right with this system, because essentially it's still kind of a rear-wheel drive car, and it sends power to the front just to get the whole thing to have better traction coming out of corners. There's just something about a V8 that it just makes you feel like you're driving like a car designed for like burly men, And even an NSX with an exhaust like mine, it doesn't give you that same kind of low-pitched, burbly sound. At low RPMs, the V6 just doesn't sound that great. That's
especially
my
stock.
opinion. Yeah, especially stock.
especially stock.
So what made you pick the V8 over the V10?
Well, you know, as far as dependability and as far as it's an Audi motor as opposed to the V10 is basically Lamborghini sourced,
yeah.
and just the maintenance and you know, this car is going to be my daily.
Right.
It is the comfortable enough, safe enough, cool enough, and it's not tiring to drive that it will be my daily. And I just didn't really want a V10 as a daily. And also, I love the V8 Sem. I'm a kid of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The V8 to me, you know, I grew up with muscle car V8s, and the V8 to me is the sound.
Absolutely, it sounds great. And it makes just enough horsepower, 414, to like make the car feel quick, but not so fast that it can overpower you, you know?
Yeah, this is a car I feel I can drive up to that I don't have to drive down to. That is too much car, at least for me.
And it's quite almost like a juxtaposition compared to supercars of today, where like Audi themselves don't even offer the V8 R8 anymore. It's V10 only, and you're looking at what, like 560 to 600 something horsepower at this point. Honestly, as a road car, that's, in my opinion, too much. I mean, this is 420. The car weighs 3,600 pounds. It's not light by any means, but it just feels like a car that you can really push on the public roads and in the canyons. Sport mode on, exclamation mark.
Yep.
I love that.
You feel that bite?
Oh yeah, it bites
Feel
so
that
much
you hit
better.
it. Put it.
Wow.
See what I mean?
So much more power than the NSX, man.
It would leave the NSX in the dust.
420 doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a good amount.
Plus the brakes are massive.
The brakes are great.
Yeah, the brakes will stop you right now.
Also, the flywheel feels really light. I mean, it just revs up so quickly. Oh my god.
The brakes great.
The brakes are fantastic.
Fantastic, right?
The steering, while it is somewhat devoid of feel compared to like an early NSX, compared to the 99, I actually think this steering might be a little better. It loads up a little bit better.
I think so too. Now, one thing about putting an exhaust on this car compared to the NSX, the NSX, your buddy comes over, puts it in the driveway, about an hour later, everything's switched out. This, the entire back of the car comes off to put, yeah, to put the new exhaust in.
I like the steering feel. Not something I expected to say about an Audi product. The way the four-wheel drive just hunkers the car down coming out of that corner.
Yep.
That's something even the NSX doesn't quite do. The NSX, you have to be a little bit more cautious, and actually with that very narrow front tire, it actually tends to understeer on throttle, whereas this one you just feel it digging in.
Compared to like the new NSX was the right approach for it. Audi built a driver's car that was still functional.
Yeah.
Very analog, but modern.
Analog. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Whereas the new NSX, everybody who drives it loves it, of course, but it is completely, you know, a modern digital car.
Yeah.
And it will outperform this car, but I don't think that you'll enjoy driving it as much. But I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, until I drive one, I'll reserve judgment on it. But on paper, it is such a digital car. I mean, paddle shifter, 9-speed transmission.
I mean, the sound is piped into you.
Yeah.
This is more hands-on, but I believe that it's easy to tool around town.
I mean, the shifter is easy. The clutch, so light. It's absolutely just as easy to drive as your 99 NSX.
I agree.
Even in the sport damper mode, it's still got excellent damping.
Oh yeah, no, it's still comfortable. I'll have to see Fenton on the track in this one.
Oh man, I think the R8 looks best in like white, black, and gray, like those kind of monotone colors. Just because it gives it that kind of more like mechanical look, whereas like, you know, in a Lamborghini you just want to be flashy, get your green or your blue or your whatever.
The R8 has a very muscular stance just from the factory.
Yeah.
There's nothing that really needs to be done to my eye.
There's no need to lower
It doesn't need to be lowered. It doesn't need to have different wheels.
Right.
It doesn't need to have really much of anything other than, I believe that almost any R8 owner would agree with me that the exhaust is the one thing that you need to do.
I mean, that's like every car.
Just
though.
like the NSX. I mean,
Yeah.
the exhaust is just, it's just awful.
On that note, let's get the full exhaust experience here. It sounds better with the windows up. You get more of that induction sound. I still can't get over the throttle response. I know I keep saying that, but I did not expect it to be so responsive. I mean, just...
Well, between throttle response and the lightness of the clutch and the clicking and dropping in the gears on the gated shifter, it's really a sweet match all the way around. And I've driven every kind of manual Porsche. I've driven every kind of manual BMW. I've driven, manual NSXs. I mean, I had a Pantera. I've had, all kinds of manual cars in my life, and I've never enjoyed a manual as much as this one.
Yeah. I really do like this shifter, but I also think the NSX shifter is one of the best in the world as well.
I agree with that.
Even though it's not gated, it doesn't give you that nice, satisfying click. There's absolutely no question at any point what gear you're in, and I think it's a little bit easier to shift quickly than this one.
Yes.
Overall, like the driving inputs, pretty close between the two, but I think 99 NSX versus this, I'd have to give it to this because of the steering. The front visibility is good, but not nearly as good as the NSX because the front hood just doesn't slope down with the same angle of attack as the NSX. But then when it comes to the driving experience, that's where these cars differ actually more than I expected, because you think on paper, yes, of course this has 50% more horsepower, but naturally aspirated, high revving, mid-engine, you'd think that they'd share to some extent some driving feel, but actually this just feels on a completely different level, and I didn't expect that.
Right.
I didn't expect a 420 horsepower car that weighed 3,600 pounds to feel this good, to be quite frank.
Yep.
The throttle response is insane. It really is insane.
The driving still seems old school.
It does. It's a really good balance of the modern tech and the old school analog feel. We're done driving both cars. Let's take a quick moment to just recap the value of these two cars, right? Because obviously we talked about how they are similar and different in their intended purpose and the way they drive and everything. But let's talk for a minute about value, because in 2018 you can get an early model R8 V8 with a manual transmission in good condition, maybe not as low as 20,000 miles, but still reasonable miles, for let's say what, 70 grand?
$65,000 to $70,000.
$65,000 to 70 grand.
Yes.
That's a ton of car for the money.
If I was to sell the 99 now, I would get more for the 99 than this.
Right.
So the question is, do you prefer having an iconic 20-year-old JDM legend car, or you prefer having the modern conveniences and the more power of the current R8? That's the trade-off.
It's a great question, because even though you're 99, as you said, it's rare, it's one of 20, it's worth more than this car.
Right.
But let's say you were looking at an early model NA2, like a 97 Target Top, decent condition. You can get one of those for around 65 to 70 grand. So which one do you pick? I mean, it really comes down to personal preference at that point. I really expected these cars, even though they're 10 years separated, to feel more similar and different.
They're so dissimilar.
But they're so different.
Yes.
They're so different. And just looking at it on paper does not tell the whole story. You really have to drive both. I mean, that car feels so much older compared to this car.
Yep.
But it's still so rewarding to drive.
And I will say this, I've been driving the R8 every day for a few weeks since I got it. I got in the NSX for the first time this morning and drove it from, my home over here to the coast. And it was so much fun. And it was so great to be back in it and
Yep.
driving it, and the visibility and just the whole old school feel of the car
Yeah.
is really rewarding. That being said, if I had to choose a car to drive every day, we're sitting in it right now,
Yeah,
the R8.
absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. But I think the moral of the story to close out this video is, if you have the money, own both.
I'm not going to disagree with that, Fenton. Great, thank you,
Yeah,
man.
thank you so much, Robert. It was a pleasure driving the NSX and the R8. I hope that gave you guys a little bit of insight between these two kind of everyday super sports cars. If you like the video, please comment, subscribe. Let me know if you have a cool car you want me to feature on the channel, and I'll see you next time.